The McAllisters didn't usually vacation in the woods. Their summers were spent in glossy rentals with infinity pools, umbrella drinks, and polite hotel staff who pretended to like children. Beach towels, seafood buffets, flip-flops, not hiking boots. But this year they did something different. It started with Sam, their 11-year-old, getting obsessed with wilderness survival videos. He started sleeping in a tent in the backyard, packing imaginary go bags, and begging to go somewhere real. Emily, 15, rolled her eyes but secretly liked the idea of being off-grid. She posted a picture of a fire tower on her private Instagram with the caption, "Mood," and got more likes than usual. Even Joel, the dad, seemed ready for a reset. Work had been chewing him alive. Mira wanted fewer screens and more sky, so they booked a cabin. Not a glamping site, not a resort, a real cabin in the northern woods of Michigan's Upper Peninsula. 2 bedrooms, fireplace, secluded charm, the listing said. It had decent reviews and only one blurry photo, which Mira should have found suspicious, but didn't. The idea of doing something different, was too intoxicating. Besides, Joel liked the price. They left before dawn in their aging SUV, cooler packed, playlist made, tired but excited. Sam kept count of deer crossings. Emily watched horror TikToks with her headphones in. By the time they reached the gravel roads, real gravel, not the cute kind, cell service vanished. The trees thickened. The world narrowed to pines, rock, and sky. Did the GPS just cut out? Joel asked. Mira was quiet, tapping the blank screen on her phone. We're close. It's the next left, I think. They passed a wooden post with no sign, then another, then a clearing, and there it was, the cabin. It sat low in the trees, slouched like it had been waiting too long. The paint was faded into a shade that could have been green once. The porch sagged a little. The windows stared back at them like they didn't want to be opened. Mira felt a flicker of unease. Not fear exactly, just something off, like seeing your reflection blink before you do. Joel killed the engine. Well, he said, climbing out, here we are, nature. Sam whooped and jumped out with his camera. Emily stayed inside, scowling at the no bars icon. Mom, she said flatly, this place has 0 signal. Mira half smiled. That's the point, remember? Emily raised one eyebrow. Did we pack the board games? Or should I just watch the wallpaper peel? Sam ran to the back of the car. Can I set up the fire pit? Unpack first, Mira said. Then you can burn things. Inside, the cabin was cleaner than expected. Not cozy, but not filthy. The floors creaked. The furniture was mismatched. Wooden chairs, a sagging couch, a round table scarred with initials. A faint smell of old rain and pine clung to everything. Joel tested the tap. It sputtered, then coughed out rusty water. Let it run, Mira said, trying to sound positive. It's probably just sitting in the pipes. Sam opened a narrow closet and found a chessboard, a stack of yellowed books, and a small ceramic bear that looked oddly shiny, like it had been recently polished. Emily claimed the bedroom with the better mattress and slammed the door. Mira set about unpacking groceries while Joel wandered outside to check the shed they hadn't expected. It was off to the side. A second structure, windowless and narrow, almost like a storage trailer with shingles. It wasn't on the listing. Joel stared at it for a long time before circling it, dragging his fingers lightly along the wood. There was a small padlock on the door, nothing fancy, and a faint smell. Earthy, maybe mold, maybe something worse. He didn't tell Mira about the smell. Instead, he came back in and built a fire, while Sam explained the difference between black bears and grizzlies, holding up his fingers to show how to tell their paw prints apart. Do we even have grizzlies here? Mira asked. No, Sam said, but it's good to know in case they migrate. Emily emerged only to microwave macaroni. No one argued. That night, they fell asleep to the sound of wind through trees, logs crackling in the fireplace. And for Mira, just for a moment, a single knock in the distance. She didn't mention it. Maybe it was a branch, maybe it wasn't. In the morning, something had changed. It wasn't obvious at first. Just a sense like walking into a room you know well and noticing the couch has been moved 2 inches to the left. The back door was unlocked. They had locked it. Mira was sure of it, but maybe Joel had gone out for firewood and forgotten to shut it properly. Joel said he hadn't touched it. Emily found a long scratch on the hood of the SUV. Mira told her it was probably a branch. Joel checked the cameras. They were off. The cabin had no Wi-Fi. The TV in the corner didn't even have a cord. They brushed it off. Took a hike to a nearby lake with a trail so overgrown it felt like walking through forgotten land. Sam was thrilled. Emily dragged her boots and took blurry pictures of moss and fungus. That evening they played cards. Joel drank whiskey out of a travel mug. Mira found herself laughing, really laughing, for the first time in weeks. The fire crackled. The kids weren't fighting. Maybe the change was good. Maybe this was exactly what they needed. At 3:11 a.m., Mira woke up again. Not to a knock this time, to breathing. It was faint, but unmistakable. The long inhale, the shorter exhale, then a pause, as if whoever was making the sound was listening too. Mira sat up in bed, pulse in her ears. Joel snored beside her, arm flopped over his eyes. She held her breath, trying to place it. Was it inside the room? She turned slowly toward the window. There, just outside, backlit by moonlight filtering through the trees, was a figure, standing perfectly still. So still that for a moment, she thought it might be a coat rack, a shadow, something benign. But then the shoulders rose and fell. The breathing was theirs. She stared, frozen. The figure didn't move, didn't knock, just stood, watching, breathing. Mira slid from the bed in one slow, continuous movement. She crouched near the floor and reached blindly for her phone on the nightstand. No signal. Of course. She looked back at the window. The figure was gone. In the morning, she told Joel. He rubbed his face and said, "Could have been a hunter or someone lost. These woods stretch for miles. With no flashlight? Could have had night vision gear." She stared at him. "You're telling me you think it was a guy with night vision goggles just casually standing at our window at 3 a.m.? He gave a helpless shrug. Emily didn't laugh when Mira told her. She didn't roll her eyes either. She just looked at her mother with a tight expression, like she'd heard something similar before, but hadn't said anything. Mira hesitated. "Have you seen anything?" Emily stared down at her phone. "Last night I heard scratching." "From where?" "My window. It didn't stop for a long time. I didn't look." "Why not?" Emily shrugged. "Because if something was there, I didn't want to see it." That afternoon, Joel drove into the nearest town to ask around, or maybe just to be somewhere with people. He left before lunch and didn't come back for hours. Mira kept the kids inside. She boiled water, cleaned the dishes, did things that made noise. It was early evening when she noticed the shed again. She hadn't looked at it since the first day, but now it looked different. The padlock was still there, but the door hung slightly open, a half inch at most, like someone had started to open it, then changed their mind. She walked toward it before she could stop herself. The smell hit her first, damp rot, stale metal. The air was thick near the door, like it had been sealed shut for years and was suddenly forced to breathe. Mira reached out and nudged the door open with one finger. It creaked slowly. The light inside was dim. One small window near the ceiling had been covered with plywood. A beam of thin daylight spilled through a crack in the wood and landed on the floor. There was a mattress, dirty, stained, no sheets. A bowl in the corner, a wooden crate with scratch marks along the top. And in the far corner, something that looked like a pile of clothes until Mira saw the shoe, a child's shoe, blue, with a dinosaur on the side. She slammed the door shut. Joel returned around 7 p.m., face pale. "We're leaving tomorrow," he said. "What did they say?" "Locals don't like that area. No one lives out there anymore. Hasn't been anyone on that land since the old ranger station shut down in '92. I found a child's shoe in the shed." He nodded, not surprised. "I think someone was living there." "I think someone still is." That night, they didn't start a fire. They left their shoes on, packed half their things. Mira kept the kids in their room, slept next to them. At 2:36 a.m., a sound split the cabin like a lightning strike. Slam! The front door. Joel bolted upright, tangled in his sleeping bag. Mira was already on her feet. She motioned for him to stay. She crept into the hallway. The door was open. The wind didn't do it. There was no wind. Everything outside was completely still. The trees were motionless. The air thick, pressed flat against the cabin. Then she saw it. Footprints. Mud smeared across the threshold. Small, bare. Not adult-sized. Leading into the house. Mira backed away. "Joel," she whispered, but before she could finish, the power went out. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was filled with something Mira couldn't name. Like breath held too long. Like eyes in the dark. Joel grabbed a flashlight and moved toward the door. "Stay with the kids," he said, voice tight. "What are you doing?" "I have to check." "Joel, just for a second." The flashlight beam scanned the front yard. Trees, car, nothing moved. Then it passed over the shed. The door was wide open, and something stood just inside. Not fully visible, just the edge of a shoulder, a flicker of movement. Joel took one step onto the porch, and the shed door slammed shut. Joel stood frozen on the porch. He hadn't flinched at the sound of the door slamming, but Mira could see the tightness in his jaw. The flashlight trembled just slightly in his hand. "I'm not going in there," he said finally. "Good," Mira whispered from the doorway. "Because if you do, you won't come out." He turned to her. "We leave, now. Bags are half packed. We go with what we have." He didn't have to say it, but she felt it too. There might not be another window. They woke the kids with as little panic as possible. Sam mumbled something about raccoons. Emily didn't ask questions. Her eyes were wide, already scanning the walls like they might begin to pulse or speak. They moved fast. Shoes, coats, backpacks. Joel tried the keys. Click. Nothing. The ignition didn't respond. He tried again. Dead. He popped the hood and stood in the freezing dark, cursing under his breath. Then louder. Mira flicked on her flashlight and stepped onto the porch. The trees were wrong. That's what struck her first. Not movement, not noise, but placement. Like the cabin had turned in the night and now faced a different stretch of forest entirely. A dense tangle of pines that hadn't been there yesterday. No trail, no road, just roots and shadow. "Joel," she called, "do you remember where the road was?" He didn't answer, just stared into the woods. The shed creaked. They all turned at once. Its door was open again. Inside, a flickering light. No source, just a flicker, like a candle trying to breathe. Then Sam said something that broke Mira's blood in half. "She's waving at me." Everyone looked at him. "She's in the window," he said. "The little girl, with the blue shoe." Mira grabbed his arm and didn't look. Joel ushered Emily into the back seat and climbed in beside her. The keys still wouldn't work. "Get out," Joel said. "We walk." "To where?" Emily whispered. "Anywhere but here." The woods swallowed them without sound. They didn't follow the road. There was none. The path they'd driven in on was gone, replaced by roots and moss and unfamiliar trees. Mira swore she saw the same dead branch 3 different times. Joel kept checking his phone for signal. Emily cried silently, one hand clutching her jacket collar. Then the voices started, soft, overlapping, not from ahead, not from behind, from beside them, just to the left of where their eyes could reach. Mira heard her own name, once, spoken like a memory. Joel stopped suddenly. "What is it?" she asked. He turned, breath hitching. "Did you hear that?" "Hear what?" "My mom's voice. She's dead." "I know." Sam was looking behind them now. He dropped his flashlight. "Mom," he said slowly, "there's another me." "What?" He looks just like me." Mira didn't turn around. "Don't look at it," she said. "Just run." They ran. It wasn't a chase. It was worse. The forest shifted, silently in place. Trees curved inward. Paths narrowed. Rocks moved. Time bent. Hours stretched. At some point, Joel whispered, "I can see the cabin." "No," Mira said. "It's back there." "We never left." They returned at sunrise. The cabin sat quietly where it always had. Same slouched porch, same mismatched windows. The shed door hung open, empty. The SUV was gone. Joel walked in first, fists clenched. He moved room to room. Everything was untouched, except the fireplace. There was something in the ashes. Joel leaned down, blew gently. Beneath the charred logs, half buried, was a Polaroid photo. He picked it up. The image showed 4 people standing in front of the cabin. Joel, Mira, Sam, Emily, smiling. But behind them, standing on the porch, was a 5th figure, a small girl in a blue shoe. They walked for hours, found a ranger station, boarded up, broke in, found a landline. Someone answered. 3 hours later, a truck arrived. Local police. They were taken to the town hospital, checked for exposure. Shock. The officer, a tired man with too much beard, asked them how long they'd been out there. 3 nights, Mira said. He shook his head. That cabin's been abandoned since 1993. That's impossible. We booked it. Online. He looked at her. Ma'am, there's no listing. That area is closed to the public, and there's no cell tower coverage for 30 miles. You couldn't have made a reservation. Not out there. Joel showed him the email. The officer studied it, then held it closer. This isn't real, he said. This address doesn't exist. They returned home 3 days later. Mira checked the website again. The listing was gone. No record of the cabin, no booking history. The photos folder on her phone, empty. Emily never spoke of what she saw in the trees. Joel started sleeping with the lights on, and Sam, quiet, once talkative Sam, stopped drawing in his notebooks, stopped speaking for days at a time, but sometimes in the middle of the night, he'd wake up screaming. She's under the floorboards, he'd cry. She wants to come home. The Rollins family didn't need a break. They needed a reset. Work had worn Joel thin. Late nights turned to all-nighters, the blue glow of spreadsheets replacing sleep. Marissa, once patient, now floated through their house like a ghost in yoga pants, murmuring schedules no one listened to. Their daughter Sophie, 13, spent every waking second with her eyes glued to her phone. The only thing they had in common anymore was silence. So when Joel's co-worker offered them a free week at his family's lake house, no Wi-Fi, no neighbors, just nature. They said yes without even asking where it was. Marissa pictured bonfires, morning swims, maybe if they were lucky, 1 or 2 unforced smiles. They packed fast and drove faster, like running from a version of themselves they didn't want to bring along. The lake house was beautiful, old but clean, wraparound porch, large windows that opened to silver blue water surrounded by trees. No other homes in sight. Even the air felt untouched, like something older than people had been breathing it long before they arrived. It was too quiet. Wow, Joel said, stepping inside and setting down their bags. This place is way nicer than I expected. Sophie wandered off without a word, already looking for a spot with reception. Marissa stood near the window, watching sunlight slide across the lake like it was alive. There were no birds, not a single one. She told herself that meant nothing. That night, they cooked pasta on an old gas stove and ate on the deck. Joel opened a bottle of wine. Sophie texted nobody, pretending to be busy. Marissa tried to start a conversation. Doesn't it smell amazing here? Like pine and dirt. Yeah, Joel said. Clean air. Sophie said nothing. They watched the water, listened to frogs. The silence between them wasn't hostile, just empty. Then Marissa saw something. Across the lake, barely visible, a figure, just standing. She blinked, gone. Probably a trick of the light. That night she dreamed of water, not swimming in it, being beneath it, her body heavy, her lungs full. Something brushing past her skin, long and cold. She opened her mouth to scream, but all that came out were bubbles. She woke up gasping. Joel snored beside her, turned away. In the hallway she heard dripping. The next morning she asked about the dripping sound. Joel said he didn't hear it. Sophie barely acknowledged her. They took a canoe out onto the lake. The water was glass, still like it had never been disturbed. Halfway across, Sophie pointed to something below. What is that? Joel leaned over the side. Beneath them, maybe 10 feet down, something pale hovered just under the surface. Long, unmoving. It could have been driftwood, could have been trash, could have been bones. Then the canoe tilted and they lost sight of it. Joel said it was nothing. Marissa said it looked like a spine. Sophie didn't say anything at all. By day 4, things were different. Joel barely left the bedroom. He said he was just tired, said he needed to rest. Sophie stared out the window for hours. She said she liked the lake now, said it was peaceful. Marissa checked her phone again. No signal. Still. At lunch, she noticed the wallpaper in the kitchen was peeling, revealing writing underneath. She pulled it back carefully. "She is under." That's all it said, scratched deep into the wood. She covered it with a towel. That night, the dripping returned. This time, it was louder. Not water, footsteps, wet ones, squishing along the floorboards, leaving behind invisible trails. Marissa walked through the house with a flashlight. Every room empty, every window locked. She turned toward the hallway. Something moved, just a flicker, like someone ducking out of sight. She followed barefoot to the basement door. It was open a crack. They hadn't opened the basement since they arrived. She stood there listening. From below, the sound of someone breathing through water. Then a voice whispering, "Come see her." She didn't go down. Not then. Marissa shut the basement door slowly, quietly, and wedged a wooden chair beneath the knob. She stood in the dark kitchen for a long time, gripping the flashlight so tightly her knuckles ached. Upstairs, Joel was murmuring in his sleep. Not words, just sounds, like someone trying to imitate speech underwater. She climbed into bed beside him and stared at the ceiling until the sky outside turned gray. In the morning, Joel was different. His eyes looked darker somehow. Not bruised, just heavier. His voice was slower, measured. He said he felt great, said he dreamed of floating. Marissa made coffee. It tasted like ash. Sophie didn't come down for breakfast. "Probably sleeping in," Joel said. "She's not in her room. Check the dock." Marissa opened the back door. Fog blanketed the lake. The dock extended like a finger into the silver nothing. Sophie was sitting at the edge, barefoot, legs dangling, staring into the mist. "Sophie," Marissa called gently. "Come back inside, honey." Sophie didn't move. Marissa walked toward her, heart thudding. When she reached the edge, Sophie finally spoke. "She sings to me." Marissa knelt beside her. "Who?" "The girl in the water. She's not mean, just lonely." A slow chill crawled up Marissa's back. "There's no one in the lake." Sophie turned to her, eyes glassy. "Then why did Dad go down to see her?" She found Joel in the living room, still calm, sipping something from a chipped mug. "I want to go home," she said. "We are home," he replied, smiling. "Joel, listen to me. Something is wrong here." "I know, isn't it beautiful?" He turned to look at her, and for a moment, just a second, his smile didn't match his eyes. She backed out of the room slowly and returned to the kitchen. The basement door was open again. The chair lay on its side, and the stairs beyond were dark. But now she could see the bottom, just barely, a square of light. Faint and green, like the color of lake water filtered through glass. She packed bags while Joel stood motionless in the hallway. He didn't try to stop her. Didn't say a word. Sophie cried when Marissa pulled her from the dock, but she didn't fight. They got in the car. Marissa turned the key. The engine sputtered once, then caught. She reversed down the gravel driveway. Joel stood at the window watching. He didn't wave, just stared. Like something was using his face but didn't know what it was for. 10 miles down the road, the car stalled. Every dashboard light blinked at once. The fog hadn't lifted. In fact, it was thicker here, like they were driving deeper into it, not away. Marissa checked the map. Nothing made sense. The road she thought they came in on wasn't marked. There was no signal, no compass reading, not even a hum of traffic in the far distance. Sophie sat in the back, arms crossed. "You're taking me away from her. She's not real. She's more real than us." That night, they slept in the car. Marissa kept the headlights on for as long as the battery allowed. In the dark, she heard it again. The voice. This time it said her name, not in warning, in invitation. "Come see her," Marissa whispered back. "What do you want?" A pause, then softly. "To remember." In the morning they walked. The trees never ended. Eventually they reached the lake again. The same lake. Same curve of the shoreline. Same broken canoe tied to the dock. Same figure waiting on the porch. Joel, still holding his chip mug, like no time had passed at all. Sophie ran to him. He hugged her, whispered something into her ear that made her smile. Marissa stood on the driveway, body hollowed out. "Why are we back here?" she asked. Joel shrugged. "You forgot something." "What?" He tilted his head. "Yourself." Marissa didn't go inside. She walked to the edge of the dock, staring into the water. It wasn't still anymore. It rippled, moved, breathed. Down there, just beneath the surface, something shifted. Long fingers of black hair floated upward. A pale face hovered beneath, eyes closed, mouth slightly open. Not dead, waiting. The girl looked like someone Marissa used to know. Then the eyes opened, and Marissa remembered. Marissa stared into the water for a long time. The girl's face didn't move. Her eyes remained open, milky, soft, endless. No air bubbles, no motion. Just the lake holding her there, like a memory preserved in glass. Then slowly, as if stirred by thought alone, the girl's mouth began to move. Not speaking, mouthing. One word again and again. "Stay." Marissa blinked and the image was gone. The water stilled. The dock creaked. Wind moved through the trees again, and birds finally began to call out from the distance, like the forest was waking up. She stumbled back, heart slamming against her ribs. The house stood quietly behind her. Joel and Sophie were no longer on the porch. She didn't go back inside. She ran, through the trees, down the road that didn't exist yesterday, but now unfolded like it had always been there. With every mile, her pulse slowed, her breath returned. No fog, no backward sky, no wrong gravity. Just a road, cracked and broken, but real. She flagged down a passing truck. The man inside didn't ask many questions, just looked at her shoes, mud-caked, barefoot on one side, and nodded slowly. "Lake house?" he asked. She nodded. He rubbed his jaw. "People go out there sometimes. Always say they were invited." "I was. Don't think it matters who sent the invite." At the sheriff's station, she gave names. Joel Rawlins, Sophie Rawlins, the house by the lake, 2 bedrooms, a red canoe, wallpaper with writing beneath. The deputy listened politely, then stood up. "Ma'am," he said, "that property burned down 26 years ago. Lightning strike, whole family inside. Husband, wife, little girl." Marissa shook her head. "No, that's not possible. We were just there. We stayed there." "There's nothing to stay in," he said. "You want to see it?" She did. They drove 20 minutes through back roads and pine trails, the deputy mumbling about deer ticks and wet leaves. When they arrived, the clearing was there. So was the lake, but not the house. Only the foundation remained, half swallowed by earth and vine, scorched stone, melted piping, a half moon of collapsed concrete steps. Marissa stood there for a long time. Then she walked down the slope to the water. At the edge, the dock was still intact, rotten, splintered, but real. And in the mud beside it, 2 sets of footprints, one large, one small, leading into the lake, but none leading back out. She never spoke to Joel again. She tried, of course she tried, but the number was dead. The contact deleted itself from her phone. Every photo from the trip vanished. Her laptop crashed. Even Sophie's belongings were gone from their house. Her husband, her daughter, like they were never real. She called their school. They had no record of Sophie ever enrolling. She asked neighbors. They remembered Joel vaguely. The guy with the glasses, right? But when asked what car he drove or what he did for work, no one could say. At night, she dreams of the lake, of the girl with the blue dress, hair floating like silk across her face, of Joel and Sophie standing waist-deep in the water, holding hands, faces calm, of a voice whispering not with menace, but with longing. "Stay, stay, stay." A month later, she found something. An old box in the attic, one she didn't remember packing. Inside, Polaroids, Dozens of them, faded, curled at the edges. Joel smiling by the dock, Sophie holding a fish on a line. The three of them roasting marshmallows by a fire pit that, according to the sheriff, hadn't existed in decades. And one photo, nearly torn in half, showing Marissa standing alone at the end of the dock, staring down at something in the water. Behind her, in the window of the lake house, a pale face stared out. Not hers, not Sophie's, not Joel's. Someone else, watching, waiting. That lake remembers everyone who visits. Some leave, some don't. And some, like Marissa, never stop wondering if they already stayed. The Harrisons weren't the kind of family who took chances. Every summer was the same. Road trip to Asheville, cabin rental near town, same diner, same board games, same everything. But that year, something was different. A week before their trip, the cabin's owner canceled. A plumbing issue. No refunds, just regrets. For once, Janet, who usually overplanned every detail, said, "Let's just find something new." So they did. A last-minute listing. Historic Victorian house, sleeps 5, ocean views. It was a little further out than they'd planned, Cape Fortune, a quiet coastal town they'd never heard of. But the pictures were charming. Old wooden floors, big staircase, bay windows, even a clawfoot tub. "This looks haunted," their son Lucas joked. Janet laughed and booked it anyway. They arrived at dusk. The sky was low and pale gray, the kind that hums before rain. The house sat on a slight hill, half hidden behind overgrown hedges. The paint was flaking. The porch sagged slightly at one corner, but the lights were on inside. "It has character," Janet said. Her husband Chris frowned. "Did the owner say they'd leave the lights on?" Janet shrugged. "Probably automatic." Inside, the air was cool and still. The room smelled of lavender and wood polish. Very faintly beneath that, salt, like something left out too long near the sea. Their daughter Lily ran straight up the stairs to pick a bedroom. Lucas followed, dragging his suitcase, calling dibs on the room that doesn't creak like a demon. Janet and Chris explored the kitchen. Someone had left a kettle on the stove, polished, dry, no owner, no key exchange, just a note in loopy handwriting. "Welcome to the Blue Rose house. Treat her gently and she'll let you stay." That night, the wind came in off the coast. The old house moaned softly in its joints. Lily said the pipes made clicking sounds like teeth. Lucas laughed and started making exorcist jokes. Chris checked the windows twice before bed. At 3:14 a.m., Janet sat up in the dark. Someone was whispering, soft and low, not from the hallway, but inside the room. Chris lay beside her, breathing deeply. She turned toward the sound. In the far corner of the room, near the closet, something moved. She flicked on the bedside lamp. Nothing was there. The next morning, Lucas came down late, eyes sunken, voice flat. "Didn't sleep." "Why?" Janet asked. He looked at her for a moment too long, then smiled. "No reason." Lily watched him silently over her cereal. "I saw you in my room," she said. "You were standing by my bed." Janet looked between them. "Lucas, were you messing with her?" He shook his head. "I never left my room." But his pajamas were wet at the hem, like he'd walked through dew. Day 2, the ocean disappeared. Not literally, but the fog rolled in so thick you couldn't see 10 feet past the porch. The waves were still there, but the sound was muffled, like someone pressing hands over your ears. Chris tried to reset the router. The listing had claimed Wi-Fi, but no network ever showed. He called the owner. The number was disconnected. Lily sat by the window for hours. "She hums to herself," she said softly. "Who?" Janet asked. "The lady in the mirror." Janet found the mirror in the hallway upstairs. Tall, antique. The glass warped slightly at the edges. It didn't hang straight. It was slightly tilted, like it wanted to fall forward. She adjusted it. For a moment, the reflection didn't match. The hallway behind her in the mirror had one extra door. She blinked. Gone. Just her own face, pale and confused. That night, Chris didn't come to bed. Janet found him at 1 a.m. sitting at the bottom of the stairs, staring up into the dark. "I thought I heard you," he said. I was in bed. No, before that. You called me. I didn't. He didn't respond, just looked up the stairs again. Janet took his hand. It was ice cold. In the morning, Lucas was different. Too polite, too formal. He set the table without being asked, addressed Janet as mother, used words he never used. When she asked what was wrong, he said, "Nothing is wrong. I feel wonderfully whole." That night, Janet heard him humming in the hallway, the same melody she'd heard in her dream, the same one Lily had mentioned. Janet woke up gasping, not from a dream, from the cold. The bedroom was freezing, like the windows had been left open all night. She pulled the covers tighter around her and sat up. The windows were closed. Chris was gone. Again. She found him in the upstairs hallway, standing in front of the mirror. Not looking into it, facing it. His reflection stared straight at her, but Chris's body was angled away. Wrong. Janet's mouth went dry. "Chris?" He didn't move. His reflection did. In the mirror, his face turned to her and smiled. The real Chris stayed motionless. She backed away. And then suddenly, both the reflection and the man turned at once. He blinked, as if waking. "What are you doing up?" he asked casually. "I could ask you the same." "I couldn't sleep. Thought I heard something." "From the mirror?" He paused, then smiled. "Don't be weird." At breakfast, Lily asked Janet a strange question. "What was my name before?" Janet looked up from her coffee. "Before what?" Lily shrugged. "Before we came here." "You've always been Lily." Lily frowned. "I don't think that's right." She got up and wandered into the den, still humming that same lullaby melody. Lucas was already there, sitting stiffly on the edge of the couch. His eyes followed her across the room but didn't blink. Janet stood in the doorway and watched them both for several minutes. Neither child spoke. Neither looked away from the mirror hanging across the room. Their reflections smiled long before their faces did. She tried to leave. That afternoon, Janet packed their things into the car while Chris slept, or pretended to. Either way, she didn't trust him anymore. The air outside was heavy, salt thick. The fog had cleared, but the ocean was wrong, too still. The waves had stopped moving. She loaded the car, called the kids, waited. Lucas didn't come. Lily stood on the porch, barefoot, mouth slightly open. "She won't let us," Lily whispered. "Who?" Lily didn't answer. Janet opened the passenger door. Inside the car, on the front seat, was her suitcase, already unpacked. Neatly folded clothes, pressed, clean. A sealed envelope sat on top. "You forgot something." The handwriting matched the note from the kitchen. That night, she locked the mirror door with duct tape and a bookshelf. She unplugged every appliance. She left the lights on. Chris didn't come upstairs, neither did the kids. Around 1 a.m., the humming began again. But this time, it was 3 voices, a trio, singing the same melody, slightly off-key, like a broken music box. Janet pressed her hands to her ears. It didn't help. The sound came from behind her eyes. The next morning, she found Chris in the kitchen. He was cutting lemons. Only lemons. Piled high on the counter, a dozen, maybe more. None of them from their groceries. Janet stared. "What are you doing?" "They don't like the smell of citrus," he said without looking up. "Who?" He glanced at her. "The others." "What others?" He paused. "Us." Lucas was outside, staring at the windows. Not at the ocean, at the windows. "I saw something," he whispered as Janet approached. "What did you see?" "A better version of me." Janet's voice broke. "Lucas, it knew things I forgot, things from when I was little. It told me about the tooth I lost in preschool, the one I buried in the flower pot." He turned to her, suddenly alert. "You remember that, right?" She nodded slowly. "I didn't," he said. "Not until he said it." Lucas pointed to the window. "He wants to live in here now. He says I can rest." Janet backed away. The mirror in the hallway was cracked now, just a thin line. She hadn't touched it. Inside, the hallway's reflection was different again. The wallpaper pattern was wrong. The light fixtures weren't theirs. A version of her, another Janet, stood at the bottom of the stairs smiling. She held hands with Lily, but it wasn't her Lily. This Lily had black eyes and no reflection. That night, someone knocked on the bedroom door. Not a normal knock. It was rhythmic. 3 soft taps. Pause, 3 louder taps. Pause, 1 long scrape. She froze. Chris sat on the bed beside her, whispering to himself, "Don't let her in. Don't let her in. Don't let her in." Janet held her breath. The doorknob twitched, then slowly turned. It didn't open, but something whispered through the crack. It used Lily's voice. "Mommy, I'm ready to go home now." Janet whispered back, "Where's home?" The voice didn't answer. In the morning, Chris was gone. No note, no clothes missing. Just one thing left behind on his pillow. A photo, not a printed one, a real photograph. A woman stood at the edge of a cliff near the ocean, holding hands with a child. They looked like Chris and Lily, but the shadows were wrong, too sharp, stretching in impossible directions. And in the top right corner of the photo, written in faint blue ink, "You already stayed." Janet barely slept. She lay curled under the covers, eyes locked on the door, waiting for it to open. It never did. But the humming didn't stop. It came from inside the walls now, inside her, like she'd swallowed it. By morning, Lily was gone, her bed untouched, shoes neatly placed by the dresser, her favorite sweater missing. Janet tore through the house, checked every room, every corner, called her name until her voice broke. No answer. Then she saw the note on the fridge, same looped handwriting. "Thank you for letting her stay." There was no signature, just a small pressed flower taped beneath it. Blue, fragile, impossible to identify. Janet tried to leave again. The car was gone this time. Not stolen, not crashed. Gone like it had never been. The gravel driveway was smooth, no tire marks, no oil stains. She tried walking, but the road curved in a way she didn't remember. Looped once, twice. By the 3rd loop, she was back at the house. Same fog, same peeling paint. Except now the front door was wide open, and the house was humming with voices. Welcoming her back, she broke every mirror. The hallway one first, then the one in the bathroom. Then the shard of silvered glass tucked inside the kitchen cabinet that hadn't been there before. But it didn't matter. The reflections were still there. Now in every darkened window, in the oven door, in the slick black screen of her dead phone. All of them showed her smiling. Not her smile, but the version of her that had stayed. Late that night, she sat in the center of the living room, surrounded by broken frames and crumpled photographs. And something changed. Not outside, inside her. A memory surfaced, one she couldn't place. Lucas's 2nd birthday. He had a cake shaped like a train. She remembered him crying because the candle melted into the frosting. She remembered singing, but that wasn't right. They'd never had a train cake. Had they? Another memory. Chris dancing in the kitchen in socks, holding Lily upside down like a little bat. Janet laughing until she cried. When did that happen? Did it? The house was feeding her memories now, or taking them. Hard to tell. She didn't cry anymore, couldn't. The feeling was gone, like someone had turned down the dial on her grief. Everything felt neutral, faded, like a photograph left in the sun. She found the final mirror in the attic, tall, oval, draped with a heavy sheet. Something pulsed behind it, not light, not movement, something like breath. She didn't want to lift the sheet, but her hand moved anyway. The mirror was clean, untouched, too clear. In it stood her whole family, Chris, Lucas, Lily, smiling, holding hands, waiting. Behind them, the house was whole again. New paint, sunlight pouring through open windows, fresh flowers on the table. Janet, the other Janet, stood beside them. Her eyes met the real Janet's through the glass. Then she stepped forward, closer, closer, until her hand pressed flat against the inside of the mirror. Janet didn't move, and the reflection smiled, a gentle smile, one that said, "You're already here." The next morning, the house was empty, the beds made, dishes clean, no signs of life, just a guest book on the entry table. The last message written in the same swirling script. The Harrisons were lovely. The house has accepted them. A perfect fit. No official records were ever found of the Harrison family staying in Cape Fortune. No booking, no police report, no missing persons notice filed. But locals still talk about the Blue Rose house. They say if you listen closely on foggy mornings, you can hear humming from the attic window. And if you look into the right mirror at the right angle, when the light is thin and the air tastes like salt, you might see a family smiling back at you, but they won't look quite right. And if you smile back,